Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Vinyl Brotherhood. It's good to be with you again as we review an album by Molchat Doma titled Etazhi. It's going to be a really good time, so get comfortable and we'll get started here momentarily. Thanks for joining us for our latest review. I think it's been a while since we've uploaded, and for that I apologize. Life kind of ramped up there for a second, but now finally we're back, for which I'm thrilled. And today's album is one that has kind of been making a name for itself. This is Etazhi by the band Molchat Doma from Belarus. In recent years, the band has gone somewhat viral on the internet for the heavy use of their music in people's social media reels and whatnot. And I don't mean to diminish the band or make them just the social media band when there's so much more, but it's definitely where many have initially come into contact with their work, including myself. But a while back, I just happened to come across their sophomore album, Etazhi, at my local record store and went straight for the impulse buy, and I'm glad I did. It ended up being right up my alley, or at least one of the several alleys, musical alleys of which I frequent, and maybe it'll be up your alley as well, and we're about to find out. So let's take this over to our record player and we'll go from there. As per usual, we're going to take a look at our album art. This is a hotel somewhere in Slovakia from the 1970s. And yeah, we're looking at Molchat Doma's Etazhi, which translates to floors. So now you know the hotel is appropriate. On the back we just have a track listing. Can't really read it. Yeah, but there you go. I really like this artwork. Okay, so Etazhi is Molchat Doma's second album. I believe they have 3, and this is the only one I've listened to, so hopefully I haven't missed too much necessary context going into this review. The album was released in 2018 and re-released in 2020 for North America, and I'm glad we're not missing out on this one. So as we formally begin, let me say this once here at the top of the review. Names will be mispronounced, I'm sure. I apologize in advance. Please know that I tried. I'll probably be sticking to first names and I'll be using track numbers if that's okay. I know my preferred streaming service doesn't use the English song titles. So first, let me briefly explain Molchat Doma to you. They are a trio of gentlemen named Igor, Pavlov, and Roman, accompanied by a drum machine. If I were to describe their sound, I'd probably, well, they're not quite like New Order, but maybe picture them as the love child of Joy Division and Kraftwerk or early Depeche Mode. All their stuff sounds sort of dreary, which is very typical of the post-punk world, but Molchat Doma do a couple things with their music that set themselves apart, such as combining the traditional raw, almost artifact-like post-punk sound with synth pads and dance beats. And of course, to Western audiences, of which I'm a part, it may be of interest to you to know that the lyrics are entirely in Russian. I don't speak the language myself, so I had to do a little digging. And from what I've discovered in my research, the lyrics are pretty bleak and at times ambiguous, but that's not to say they aren't evocative. Between the poetic lyrics and the music, there's a feeling and a mentality that they're attempting to capture. And at that, I think they certainly did succeed, in my opinion. They're painting a picture of life in a world recovering from Soviet rule and disillusionment with everyday life things, and they've expressed as much. I'm not putting words in their mouths. And that's the dark, drab picture that they're painting here. And you know, fortunately, what they've come up with is very compelling and, dare I say, even fun. So the album kicks off with a smattering of drum machine, followed closely by some cold, ice-cold late 70s synthesizer parts, letting us know that it's time to party. Great way to start a record. You can practically envision yourself turning that volume knob to the right as the rhythm gets going. This album ultimately features two different kinds of songs, the dancey synth pop cuts and the post-punk guitar-driven ones. There's certainly crossover between the styles, but these two categories are clearly going after different things. The second track, titled Dance, is straight up classic post-punk. The rhythm section is tight and focused, propelling the track at a driving pace, while the angular guitar work fits the beat like a glove. There's a catchy vocal hook for the chorus. There's not much to it melodically or lyrically for that matter. Igor is simply just lamenting not being able to dance, and there could be more depth to it in context, but in any case, it's fun to attempt to sing along to. Track 3, Films, is super fun and likely the strongest of the dancey cuts, maybe even the best song on the album, I don't know. This is the one you want to show your friends for sure. There's a nice marriage between the guitar leads and the synths, but it's the funky bass line that steals the show. And this song also features one of the most memorable vocal melodies of the bunch. The album moves at a pretty relentless pace, at least up to this point. There's a quiet lead going into track 4 titled Waves. This one's a cool mid-tempo jam with an earworm guitar riff and a fun beat. This song takes its time. It just kind of builds up at the beginning, and it's a good place on the album to sort of analyze Roman's guitar work. It's very true to the post-punk tradition as far as writing goes, but I've really been enjoying the guitar tone. It's like exaggeratingly rounded and compressed with a slight warping effect to it. You probably heard it in the preview earlier. And it's cool that they've developed a distinctive sound. Like track 6, Forecast, is probably the most overtly new wave of the bunch, making it sort of an outlier. No guitars, just program beat and a bunch of synthesizers. It shakes things up a bit, which was starting to feel necessary at this point in the album. And Igor's drone didn't feel especially inspired on this track though. And I think the more complex arrangement definitely provided the opportunity for more exploration there, as was the case with track 3, and they just kind of missed out on that. Track 7, Bedpan, is the one that many of us have been hearing on social media lately. The lyrics are based off the work of Russian poet Boris Ritzy. It opens with a nifty drum pattern. It kind of reminds me of Flashdance. This song is like the depressing version of Flashdance. The synth that comes in towards the end really pushes the song forward, along with Igor's increased intensity in his vocal. The thrill is short-lived, however, as the song doesn't even hit the 2:30 mark. It's pretty great though. I love how tight the band sounds on this one, and this little tune has become something of their signature hit, and I find it fitting as it perfectly encapsulates the whole of the Molchat Doma sound in a nice 2-minute recording. I've got a couple issues with Etazhi that absolutely must be addressed. I found myself baffled at some of the production choices here and there. It didn't always make sense to me for the drum machine fills to be right at the forefront, like right by my ear, cranked to 11 in high fidelity. I felt like that it was often at the expense of much more interesting elements of the music, namely the bass, which brings me to my other nitpick. There were times when I found that the bass just to be a little low in the mix, which is pretty regrettable when the dance element is such a huge part of your shtick, of what you're doing. The bass guitar has a really important role, and some songs in Etazhi seem to understand that, while others not so much. Like I said, it's just a nitpick and not a deal breaker by any means, but at one point I could almost like sense an urge to travel to Belarus myself for the sole purpose of turning up the bass track on the console. It looks like Roman did most of everything on the production end of things, and he's clearly a man of taste with a great guitar tone like that, so perhaps it's best not to question him, but it's just my opinion. Now, I didn't get the impression at any point that Molchat Doma was trying to rewrite the script on post-punk, bass mix choices notwithstanding. Some of it felt pretty standard, track 5 in particular, but it's all very respectable. If that subgenre is your particular cup of tea and you know it well, Etazhi probably won't blow your mind as far as the writing goes. A major plus for me, however, is that despite having some fairly obvious influences, the band has established a strong identity for themselves. A couple songs in You know, a couple songs in, you kind of know what they sound like, you know what they're about. Nobody's doing it exactly the way they are, and I can certainly appreciate that. It's a pretty good album. I've really been enjoying it, and I think you will too. If you find the foreign language to be an obstacle, I'd encourage you to give it a few more spins and get acquainted with the nuances of the music, and just think of the vocals as another instrument while you search up the translation on the web somewhere. And the music gives me the impression that the lyrics are important, and I don't want to minimize that aspect of the work whatsoever. Like many bands, not all but many, lyrics can be a huge part of a band's identity, and I'm sure that's the case here as well. The lyrics I did look up, they were quite good. Sadly beautiful, very poetic. Like I said, you get the impression from the music, and you know how people say that music is like the universal language and whatnot. But yes, repeat listens. Repeat listens will help get over that initial sameness as well. It's a short album. It's barely over 30 minutes, and it can feel a tad slight, but for the 30 minutes that they do have our attention, it's a really good time. If you're into alternative rock at all, I have a hard time believing you won't find something to enjoy here. So yeah, that's it. You should check it out. So I have some final thoughts, so let's go ahead and head back to our living area. Needless to say, Molchat Doma has been a nice surprise. I will definitely be checking out their other records, and I don't know if there are any fans out there that would recommend Etazhi as a starting point, but that's what I did. Maybe you can fill us in on the details in the comments. But as for Etazhi, I'm happy to give it a thumbs up. It's a simple and straightforward take on a well-realized concept and an all-around good time. Give it a listen, I think you'd enjoy it. Let's go ahead and give this thing a rating. How about a solid 7 for Etazhi? It's not life-altering, for better for worse, but I can guarantee that it'll get those toes tapping. And I'm really looking forward to more from Molchat Doma. Actually, I'm expecting to see them live here in a few weeks, so keep an eye out. Keep an eye on the official Vinyl Brotherhood Instagram if you'd like to see a pic or two of my time at the show. Now, I guess it's time to turn this around on you all. What did you think of the album? I'd be more than happy to check out your impressions and opinions in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and so on and so forth. Thanks a ton for joining us today. You're very much appreciated. And we'll be back soon with another review. So I guess we'll see you then right here at the Vinyl Brotherhood. Have a good one.